Today, I'll be speaking with Hilary Shea, a licensed and certified speech language pathologist with 12 years of experience, specializing in concussion and neurological disorders. Hilary, great to have you on today. I appreciate your time.
No, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Listen, we could start in a lot of different places, and I'll mention a
hmm
few and then we'll pick a place to start. We've observed in Donald Trump what appears to be a diminished range of vocabulary, that the sort
hmm
of number of words he uses is diminished over time. We've
hmm
seen these what I call glitches, where when he gets a word wrong, there's a physical thing where a shoulder goes up and he seems to almost reboot, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
All of this stuff that as a layperson I observe, and I don't know what to make of it. You work with folks in a lot of situations that seem to have overlap with what we see with Donald Trump. As a
hmm
layperson, am I making something out of nothing, or are there clinically relevant observations that we can make here?
No, you are on target. And at this point in his decline, I think it is just very easy for people to identify it without any type of understanding of why. And that's one of the reasons why I talk about this on my channel, concussiontalks.slp, is because there are reasons why. So with that question, I actually want to separate out twitches and glitches because
Okay,
there's two different things going on. And then when they
please.
occur at the same time, there's a reason. So the twitches are something likely that they're likely something that's called myoclonus. And a myoclonus is going to be a brief burst of an involuntary muscle movement. So that's where you see kind of the arm go out, the shoulder go up, kind of whatever. What's happening within the brain networks is that the brain is supposed to be regulating and suppressing unwanted motor movements. If you think about kids, they're all over the place. Their brains haven't developed enough to do this. And then, kind of as we age and the brain declines, it comes back. So, the frontal lobe should be suppressing unwanted motor movements like those twitches. That's called inhibitory control or disinhibition. But what happens is as brain decline and dementia, it damages the circuits. We have this like excitatory go do this, inhibitory stop. Then we have what's called cortical excitability. And this is a lot of neuroscience, but it's basically just the neurons are very hyper excitable. And that results in these sudden muscle contractions that are unwanted.
Now,
So,
why are they happening in conjunction with the word glitch?
mhm.
Glorious milestones of all time, and you know what that is, 250.
Yeah, so the word glitch, that has to do with where the brain's energy is going. The brain's energy is going to the glitch. The glitch is its own separate issue, a language difficulty, phonemic paraphasia. So, because the brain is already struggling to suppress these movements, now all of a sudden it's putting a lot more effort to this speech because there was an error and it has to think, how do I correct this or how do I get out of this situation? The twitches happen more frequently.
Okay, now I'm trying to think of if I, for example, am doing a difficult math problem in my head.
hmm
In theory, my brain is focused on that math problem and it
hmm
is not suppressing these physical movements, but yet it doesn't happen to me. So I guess my question
Correct.
is everyone in the same situation where there is this balance between controlling the movement and controlling thought and speech? Or is
hmm
there something that would explain why with Trump it manifests in this way?
So everyone's going to be in the same situation to some degree. If you're taking that math problem, for example, you might notice that you're doing this with your pencil and not recognizing it, or your foot's tapping or something
Mm.
like that. So you might have those so-called unwanted or unplanned movements, but they're not happening to the point where in the middle of speaking, which while it is difficult, is not that difficult. It's just the amount, the frequency, and the severity that tends to change when brain decline comes in.
When it comes to these studies, like for example, during the 2024 election campaign, there was a study
hmm
done which purported to analyze the change in vocabulary diversity over a period of time for Donald Trump,
hmm
Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris. And roughly what it found was that over the prior period of time, Joe Biden's vocabulary diversity had diminished a little bit. Kamala Harris's was basically flat, and Donald Trump's vocabulary diversity had diminished significantly, meaning the number of different words he uses in public speaking have gone down. Is
Mhm.
that clinically relevant in some way? And how does it interface with your work and what can be going on?
It's absolutely clinically relevant because, again, if we look at development in children, they have lower vocabulary, they develop their vocabulary. We all, as adults, have a robust vocabulary. As brains decline, we lose that. And that's in everybody. Like, I keep trying to not scare people, but everybody's going to go through this. Even if you just have a typical age-related decline, we're all going to go through this. So if you look at someone, we'll compare Biden and Trump. Biden's a little bit older, and yet still his vocabulary was a lot closer to what his most robust would have been. And then you look at Trump, and those percentages are so different. So that signifies that the brain deterioration in Trump is much more significant than in Biden. I can look at those numbers and go, huh, wow, this 80, I don't know how old he is anymore, but 84 and 80, I think, year old man, like his vocabulary is very repetitive. It's very monosyllabic, which sometimes is going to have to do with the fact that it's really hard for Trump to say multisyllabic words right now.
I am here to announce my candidacy.
There's also some perseveration where it's not just the words that he uses are the same, he also just says the same stuff over and over and over again. Why are we still talking about the 2020 election? It's because he is perseverating, which means just getting stuck in a loop on the 2020 election and among other things. There are a lot of other things where he says almost the exact same thing in every speech. So there's
You
a lot that goes on.
you give the Montreal Cognitive Assessment as part of your
Yes,
job.
I do.
First of all, getting a perfect score on it, as Donald
Mhm.
Trump claims to have done numerous times, what can
Yep.
that tell us and what can it not tell us?
So if he actually got a perfect score, a 30 out of 30, it honestly tells me nothing.
Hmm.
Nothing, nothing really positive or negative.
Why is
Because
that?
a 30 out of 30 on the MOCA, you should really be able to achieve that with people who have dementia who come into my office who already have a diagnosis can still sometimes get 30 out of 30 on that test.
Hmm.
I actually gave it to my 5-year-old. He was 5 at the time, just to be like, hey, guess what? Like, my son almost passed this test and he's 5. He doesn't know what an analog clock is, and yet he missed points for that, but he could still do well enough. So 30 out of 30 doesn't actually tell me much. The fact that he has taken it multiple times over the course of a year and a half tells me way more
Okay,
because
Let's dig into that.
yeah, yeah.
So there's the claim that the reason Dr. Oz said Trump constantly takes it because
Mm-hmm.
he knows he scores well and he likes scoring well on the test. It gives him something
Mm-hmm.
to talk about. Others
Mm-hmm.
have speculated you would only be administered this test so frequently if there was a concern. Is it
Yeah.
possible that because he's president and he wants to brag about it, he's just being given the test regularly?
I mean, if I were a good clinician, I wouldn't give it. That you're not, there is something with test retest reliability. The more that we give a test, the more potential there is that someone who took the test 6 months ago could remember things.
Mm,
With the MOCA, I will say there are multiple versions. They test the same skills but have different animals, let's say.
right. It could be a
But
giraffe one day, but an elephant the
yeah,
next or something
yeah.
like that.
So
Yeah.
we do have a few different versions, but it's not clinically relevant. So even if the president of the United States was like, I really want to take this test, I would try to steer him in another direction and say, hey, you did so great the last time. We don't even need to take that test. We know you're fantastic. There's no good clinical reason to give it unless they are tracking decline, possibly medication use. There's
Hmm.
always that question of, is he taking this new medication? Is he getting some medication none of us even know about? And so people who are in studies will likely get the MOCA or whatever test they're being given multiple times more frequently than the general population would. So if they're actually doing it, not just to say, sure, President Trump, if you want it, let's give it to you, they're looking for something, whether it's decline or medication. How is he responding to medication?
You've spoken about word retrieval fluency issues where Donald
Mm-hmm.
Trump he's thinking of a word that he can't find. And so like for example, if I couldn't find the word loan, I might go, "Well, they gave me a thing where I asked them for money and then
Yep.
they give me cash and I pay them back over like I wouldn't be able to find the word loan. Is there
Hmm.
clinical relevance to that?
Yep. So if we think about word retrieval fluency, it's can you access the vocabulary that you have and can you do it fluently enough, which is basically conversational.
Hmm.
What you would have just done, that description of it is called circumlocution. That is just describe the word and see if either that cues my own brain or it cues my listener's brain to provide it, which is completely normal. Again, these are things that when they happen every once in a while,
Sure.
it's not a big deal. When I get more tired at the end of my day, I have those issues as well. But the frequency of his, especially given that a lot of times he's giving a speech off a teleprompter, he should not be having any issues finding words. They should be right there. Now, we do know that he goes off the teleprompter frequently.
Venezuela is a very happy place. Had a tragic incident with with the event that took place a week ago. What a terrible thing that was. They had a movement, a shifting of earth that was unbelievable. They've never seen anything like it. A lot of people were killed. So it's all unrelated. But by the way, we were the first ones there to help. We were there to help Venezuela. It was an earthquake, I guess you'd call it. It was a pretty massive earthquake.
But yes, if you're going to have a word finding issue, there are likely neurological reasons behind that. Stroke is one of the biggest reasons why you would have word finding. Dementia is another reason. Things like brain tumor, things like medication side effects, but there's something going on that is not probably normal.
What have I not talked about that you, as a professional speech language pathologist, observe in Trump's speech that is relevant?
Yeah, so many things, but we don't have time for all of that. So the biggest thing are the phonemic paraphasias. So word finding is actually different. Word finding is part of language, but why I'm called a speech language pathologist is because they're two separate things to treat. Language is I can't find my words. Speech is I can't produce the sounds and get my words out.
Hmm.
So he has a lot of what are called phonemic or phonological paraphasias. That occurs when a person knows what word they want to say, but they just make incorrect speech sounds. They can substitute, they can omit, they could add a sound, they could mix up sounds in a word. We've seen him doing all of those things.
Name the undisputed, when did this come out, Mr. Speaker? The undisputed champion of.
So where that comes in is like we have like the concept of I want to talk about the word cat, and then I'm going to pick the word. I'm going to go find it. The word is cat. Then we have something called phonological encoding. That means I have to go cat in order to do that. I have to motor plan. That's the sequencing part that's really hard for him. And then I have to then be able to coordinate it with my respiration, my breathing, my voicing, and my articulation to be able to say it. So it's quite complicated, but he does it all the time.
Can these symptoms, I guess is the word I'll apply, or phenomena, can
Hmm.
they be simply restricted to these are speech issues and they don't relate to any deeper cognitive or neurological problem? Is that possible?
I don't think so. Not off the top of my head. The word finding is actually less concerning for could just be typical than the phonological issues that he's having, especially because he wasn't having them before. If you look back to his prior speeches, he didn't have a lot of them before. So
True.
we have a baseline where we know that this isn't something that is difficult for him. Look at Biden. He has a known stutter from childhood. So I don't look at phonological issues with Biden the same way I do with Trump.
Hmm.
So if you're going to have a phonological issue that is new, you're looking at something neurological, something like a stroke, dementia.
If this next aspect to this is outside of your purview, just tell
Hmm.
us and that's fine. One of the
Hmm.
things I notice is fine motor skills seem to be a problem
Hmm.
for Donald Trump. When he tries
Hmm.
to cap a pen, when he spent 90
Yeah.
seconds trying to clip a medal on someone recently and then
Yes.
ended up kind of tying it in a weird knot. At
Yep.
Lindsey Graham's funeral yesterday or the day before, he struggled to open Tic Tacs.
Tic
And then when he
Tacs.
finally got one, it sort of like bounced off and fell to the floor. Is
Hmm.
that within your purview of observation? Is it related to what we're talking about?
Absolutely. It's not necessarily something that I treat because it is more of a physical or occupational therapy, but we look at the whole person.
Hmm.
And if you're going to have issues with coordination with your speech, I'm guessing you're going to have issues with coordination elsewhere.
Why is
So
that? What's the connection?
Oh, it's just the brain controls everything. So fine motor control of your articulators is the same thing of fine motor control with your fingers,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, I've looked at, his handwriting. I mean, you can see that perseveration in his signatures. I've done a couple videos when he's doing executive orders, and he'll kind of start it and it's like a jumpy thing, so it's not smooth and coordinated. He also has his MMMMM, just it's like it just keeps going and going and going. You mentioned he can't cap the Sharpie again. All of those fine motor controls, it's not just the muscles themselves, it's the proprioception, where his body is in space and what his arms and legs and things are doing. It's visual perceptual processing. It involves more than we think. So when you have general brain decline, you have everything becomes affected.
Let me briefly just shift to Senator Mitch McConnell for a moment.
Mm,
We have no idea what the status of his health is today, but that's not what I want to ask you about. He had these
okay.
two freeze ups where in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of sentences he physically and verbally froze, seemed to
Mm-hmm.
lose contact with what was happening in the room around him, and
Yep.
then sort of spontaneously came to. Can
Mm-hmm.
you talk to us about whether that has relevance to your work and your specialty? Because there's really the only
Mm-hmm.
explanation we've gotten from his office is he's feeling better after that happened,
Right.
which doesn't really
Yeah.
explain what happened.
Right. It does. If he were my patient, ideally, I would know exactly what was going on. It would be concerning for either epilepsy, some type of
Hmm.
seizure, or it would be concerning for something called a TIA, a transient ischemic attack. So that's some people call that a mini stroke. Mini strokes kind of are the just like there's nothing going on. It's very short. You typically wouldn't see it on brain imaging. You might see if there's been multiple, there's some history of what looks like a TIA.
Hmm.
But it is just those like, I'm out and I come back. And his case is a little bit concerning too, because he also had that prior concussion. And concussions, you're potentially more likely for seizure. And he was likely not fully recovered from that concussion after the fall. So, I mean, his case is like his brain is also not appropriate to be a senator in the United States Congress, and he needs to. I mean, that was before this unexplained mystery hospitalization. Um, so
What would
yeah.
be the testing that would be done on related to that after such an incident?
Yeah, they'd probably do CT scan and or MRI. They might be doing testing for seizures with EEG. And then from there, it's monitoring, honestly, because they sometimes are not going to show up, but it's like you would think about, well, what recommendations do I have? If they think it's seizure, they might put them on an anti-seizure medication. Otherwise, though, they're going to say, hey, you should, decrease the stress in your life. Like that's going to be lifestyle changes are going to be huge. You should try to get exercise and eat healthy and not be stressed out. And that's not exactly what a senator is doing.
All right. Well, as we know, he's now been missing for over a month, and it's a whole
Hmm.
other can of worms that we're dealing
Yes, it
with right
is.
now. We've been
Yeah.
speaking with Hillary Shea, licensed and certified speech language pathologist. Really appreciate your time and your insights today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.